This podcast is brought to you by VinZero. VinZero pioneers solutions and services to the AEC and manufacturing industries to support net zero targets. Visit vinzero.com to learn more about how organisations design, build and solve through digitalisation. From VinZero to you, welcome to our Think Future podcast series. Each week we'll share conversations with industry leaders from around the world to find out how they're thinking future. Subscribe to VinZero Think Future for access to more episodes, interviews and profiles. Practicing globally, Adrian McGregor is a biourbanist, adjunct professor and author of the book Biourbanism, Cities as Nature. He is the founder and chief design officer at McGregor Coxall, a firm of biourbanists that delivers prosperity by design. Propelled by research from its Biourbanism lab, the firm provides data-led urban design, landscape architecture and environmental services from 5 studios across Australia and the UK. Nominated as one of Sydney's 100 most creative people, he master plans new cities and helps existing cities and places enhance prosperity by planning for climate resilience. He received the Prime Minister of Australia's Award for Urban Design and has helped McGregor Coxall receive more than 200 international design awards. He joins us today to share his passion for biourbanism. Welcome to the program, Adrian.
Thanks so much. It's great to be here.
Adrian, can you tell us a little bit, first of all, about your passion for biourbanism?
Yes, well, biourbanism is a city model that I've been working on for probably the last 15 to 20 years. It is a model that I've created to help cities become resilient to the climate crisis. And it's a way to rethink how we design cities, how we plan cities, and how we retain prosperity into the future.
So how did you become interested in the concept of biourbanism?
My interest in biourbanism began at university. One of the very first subjects I did in first year was called human ecology. And it was a fascinating subject that really integrated planetary science, design, and human beings, Homo sapiens. So it set forth actually the concepts around global warming, ozone depletion, and many of the things that we are still talking about today. So I had this incredible opening, if you like, into these concepts. And I think it's seeded an interest that has developed over time as I've designed and become or engaged in the design of cities and places. So yes, that's where it was seeded.
And you established what is now known as the Biourbanism Lab in 2006, which is a world first. What was the inspiration behind this, and how does that actually support your quest for biourbanism today?
We live in an incredible world. AI, data, digital tools are really available in a way that they never have been. So there's an incredible opportunity to use research to make the invisible visible. And in planning and designing places and cities, this is a really powerful set of tools because it allows you to understand the functions, operations, and almost the metabolisms of cities in a more powerful way. So the lab really is a place where our research and our data science is held and kind of developed. So we actually have 5 PhDs in the lab at the moment, and they're working globally, but the interesting thing is that we are crossing over between academia and professional practice. So we're moving people who have an academic background into projects to work with clients, and they're bringing that way of working, if you like, and that rigor to our projects. And it's really enhancing the kind of tools that we can offer to our clients. And we're developing new methodologies for understanding cities. So it's a very interesting and exciting group of people that we have who are collaborating in the lab.
So what sort of trends are you seeing that support biourbanism in cities around the world, given that it's a relatively new approach? And what do you think it's going to take to get some momentum globally with biourbanism?
I think that the big shift that is happening is around the concept of systems thinking. And really the biourbanism model, it works on the interrelationships between systems. We tend to, and have tended in the past, to design in silos. So if you look at the way nations and national governments, federal governments, state governments, they fund their departments in silos. They all have a separate budget. And they do the work that is relevant to their own budget, department, and silo. Unfortunately, what that creates is a kind of counterintuitive outcome in terms of holistic environmental kind of thinking and in cities. So it means that we're not working with those systems in an interrelated way. And really that's what nature does. Ecology and ecosystems work together in a way that is interrelated. And we have yet to understand that in our cities. Our cities do function through these relationships, but we haven't yet been able to harness those relationships to create the outcomes that we need. And that's created, I think, the issues that we have now around global warming, greenhouse gas emissions, pollution, all of these things, because we are not thinking about the entire city as a set of systems.
So in your book, Cities as Nature, you dive into this a little more. How does ecosystem thinking translate into cities?
The title of the book is Cities as Nature. And this really is quite a radical prospect for most people, because we think about ourselves as humans. Well, we're actually Homo sapiens, so we're a species, we're a mammal, and we create our cities. And then we have the wild places that we, learn about at school or university, which we treat as nature. The new thinking that's come out of ecological sciences and planetary sciences actually starts to combine those. And the concept or term anthrome refers to the city being reclassified as a form of human-modified nature. So as Homo sapiens, we build, operate, and manage our cities. And those cities are in the troposphere, they exist in the biosphere, so therefore they must be part of nature. They're not on a different planet or a different space. So they exist inside our planetary boundaries. So I think the change of thinking that's required, that is quite radical, is that we understand our cities as nature. Then we'll better understand the natural resources, the natural capital that goes into them, the flows of environment that are required to maintain them. And of course, if we think about, for example, the way a termite builds its home, they build, their skyscrapers. It's like a tall building or a city. And the termite and the city that it creates and its community lives in, we call it nature. But if we create a set of tall buildings in our city and we populate and inhabit those, that's not nature. So you can see that there's a mismatch in the thinking, and that really has led to a lot of the issues that we have where, the environmental crisis is really a design crisis, and we need to change our understanding of cities and think about them as nature in order to get the sort of prosperous outcomes for ourselves, in our communities and our environment that we need in the future.
So biourbanism involves two systems. One is the biosystem and the other's the urban system. Talk with us about the biosystem.
Biourbanism as a word is split, and each of those are kind of the larger repositories, if you like, that the other systems sit inside. So there are 5 biosystems. There's citizens, which is us. There's food, of course, the agriculture that we need to sustain ourselves. There's landscape, which is the terrestrial ecosystems, the plants and animals that sustain us and sustain our planet. Then there's waste, which we all understand, landfill and pollution, carbon, greenhouse gases are part of that. And then we also have water, which is our oceans and our waterways.
Talk to us now about the urban systems.
So the urban systems are those 5 systems. The first one is economy. We all understand economy. That's our inputs and outputs, how we manage our economies. Energy, which is really clearly in focus now as we try to transition out of fossil fuel energy and into renewables and provide a decarbonised set of sources. Then there's infrastructure, which includes all of our buildings, our motorways, bridges, structures like that support our city. And mobility is our public transport networks, our private vehicles, and all those and some bicycles, and even down to people walkability and walking. And then the last one, technology. So software and all of those things that we're using to now drive our cities along.
So how do the two systems work together in cities, for example, that are on the opposite side of the world? Do the principles come together in exactly the same way, or does it differ based on where you are?
It's a good question. Cities are or can be characterized in the same way that nature is. So we can characterize cities by their geography and their location. For example, a city may be coastal. It may be situated on a river. It may be on a mountain. So all of those are going to influence its climate. The systems themselves still apply to each of those different kinds of cities and their different climatic and geographic locations. They will have different kinds of influences, if you like, but looking at the interrelationships of the systems is really the kind of important part of how we better design holistic outcomes, because it doesn't matter, what part of the world the city is located. We still need to think in that systems way. But there are certainly some also considerable differences between cities in the developing world and mature cities in mature economies. So they all have different challenges. And, clearly some of the issues that we're facing globally around, equity of wealth and, security are different in different parts of the world. So cities all have different challenges, driven both by their geographies, climates, their social conditions, their governments, geopolitical issues, etc.
So how does a designer practically integrate those biourbanism systems into the design process?
So the way that I write about this in the book is in chapter 4. I talk about the concept of digital twins. So digital twins are, you probably would have heard a lot about the metaverse, and the building of a digital world is a different place that we can live in. So digital twins are now a new and powerful way to replicate the physical world in a digital environment. So the power of computing and the speed of processing has become, so incredible that we can now really model cities in a way that we never could. And with that, we can model some of the natural or nature and environment processes that sit inside as well. And these digital twins can be done at a very, very large scale. They can be done at a country scale, at a city scale, and all the way down to kind of a place scale. So they do provide an incredible platform for us to test different scenarios, to model planning outcomes, for example, changes to cities. They also are powerful tools for modeling climate change and extreme weather. So using some of the global data sets, we can actually start to predict and map temperature changes, sea level rise, all the things that are driving extreme weather. And we can look at those and overlay them into the model so that we can start to, project and create resilience for our communities and our places. These are really incredibly powerful tools that are available. And AI is really driving this even more quickly. So there's no excuse now for really not moving forward with decarbonisation and resilient planning, because we need to protect our cities, our places, and our citizens from these events and increasing frequency and severity of extreme weather events.
So what sort of progressive planning has impressed you when it comes to designing for resilience in cities?
I think that there's a really growing global movement that's focused on delivering resilience plans and resilience thinking into cities. And in many ways, cities that have been impacted by extreme weather are those that have moved most quickly in developing plans. I think that going back in time, that Michael Bloomberg, as Mayor of New York, really began the momentum in terms of an overall plan that's driven out of a local government or city department that was very progressive in developing resilience planning. And I think Hurricane Sandy in 2012 and the impacts of the hurricane on the city, really drove that along. And then from there, we saw the Rockefeller Center start to fund resilience offices, the birth of C40 cities and some of these NGOs and things that are really have been slowly but progressively developing expertise around resilience and trying to engage cities around the world in their planning for extreme events. So as a firm, we've also been working, we worked in Bristol in the UK on resilience planning for the whole public estate of the city. So looking at risk to their real estate portfolio, if you like, of all the public lands and public assets. And again, this is something that a lot of cities are beginning to do, but there needs to be a lot more action and progress. There's still many that are really not taking this head on. And we're seeing in Australia, for example, I often talk about Australia being the canary in the coal mine because we've seen in the Northern Rivers, 2 flood events that have displaced, a whole number of people in the centre of Lismore. And we have climate refugees in the Northern Rivers. There are many people that still have been unable to return to their homes, and they're living in either trailers or with friends or in places their homes may be still uninhabitable. So we already have these climate refugees, and we're seeing the government then having to build, funds to buy back properties that are flood impacted, which of course then knocks on to the insurance industry, and they're really struggling now to keep up with the kind of being able to insure these properties that are in areas that are heavily impacted and will be heavily impacted in the future. So for people just with their personal property and governments that have assets in these areas as well, it's a situation of increasing risk and increasing problems that come back to taxpayers, really, because we're funding, the buybacks and funding how we relate to or how we deal with these extreme events. So these things are going to escalate, and the amount of risk is escalating. I think by 2050 it was a $1.5 trillion global risk in terms of property and assets that has been projected. So the numbers are really large and growing, and it is signalling to us that we need to move quickly on resilience planning. We can predict now what's going to happen, and we need to move.
Are you looking for a digitalisation and net zero partner to help you achieve your goals? Join the thousands of AEC and manufacturing customers globally who have turned to VinZero to start their journey toward a net zero future. With 32 offices around the world, VinZero can connect you to the right technologies and workflow processes so you can maintain your competitive position and increase profitability. VinZero has an industry expert to help you navigate the best pathway forward, wherever you are on your digitalisation and net zero journey. Visit vinzero.com to find out more. So what are the main challenges for cities to overcome the poor planning that leads to those types of dire results?
I think the first thing is the recognition that they need to act. I think there's still a lot of disinformation and a lot of inaction, inertia, if you like, around change, because you really need to set up, departments inside your organization. You need to bring in expertise, capability. You need people to start to focus on these issues. So it's hard for a lot of cities that perhaps, are underfunded already, and they're trying to deal with, many issues at the same time. But I think this needs to be part and parcel of normal business now for government agencies that, from federal through to state and local level. There is in Western countries or in mature economies, there's probably more action. But in many cases, developing economies are those that are most at risk. Large populations on coastal areas, very, very close to sea level, for example. So there is also a growing call for, some of the mature economies to help support the people in developing nations to, work out how they can become or increase resilience with very large numbers of vulnerable populations. So I think that there is a role for us to play, not only in our own cities, but also helping others.
That's one of the things that McGregor Coxall are doing very well so far in terms of bringing together the right minds and expertise. So what have been some of your proudest moments as the Chief Design Officer for McGregor Coxall so far?
One of the things I'm most proud of is the incredible diversity of people that we have in the firm now. So we began with a landscape architecture focus, and we were working in green infrastructure, blue infrastructure, helping cities retrofit ecologies, if you like, repair damaged environments, increase the kind of joy of public spaces and places in the cities. We've even designed cities. So I've worked on one city in China. I'm working on a city at the moment in the Middle East and others. So I think what's really interesting is the mix of people that we have and how they work together to contribute ideas. So from environmental science to urban design, landscape architecture, now data, analysis, even AI, and all of these things coming together to create outcomes that are much stronger than a single discipline could create. And we call it interdisciplinary design. That's how we term it now at McGregor Coxall. And we actually call ourselves biourbanist as well. So from the book, we've kind of redefined how we work. So in terms of project outcomes, I think some of the ones that have been quite exciting, in fact, going back to Parramatta Road in Sydney, which is was a really challenging problem. It's 23 kilometres of road that sits right in the centre of the city, and it was polluted, congested. And we won an international design competition to reimagine the road. And the reason that we won was that we worked out that to actually repair the road and recreate it as a great set of public places and the communities around it, we need to look much wider than the road itself. So we looked at the whole region, and the answers that we found came through the systems that have then since emerged into biourbanism model. So things like public transport and walkability and mobility, infrastructure, of course. So, dense homes that are located within walking distance to transport. The water system, which was repairing the myriad of waterways that cross the road and then, repairing ecologies and waterways. So in many ways, the thinking that went into that particular project birthed this idea of systems thinking and how it could be harnessed at the wider scale to solve more local problems. So that was an interesting journey for us. And I think now scaling up, we did an incredible project in China. It's called the Bird Airport, which was using recycled black water to create a place for birds in the global or in the migratory corridors where the birds fly from, tens of thousands of kilometres north-south each year. In the flyway, we created an airport for the birds, which is actually on an old industrial site that had been really massively altered. And we created a set of new wetlands and education facilities, research facilities for scientists that would sit on that site. That was very interesting. And of course, scaling right up to cities. So, we're actively involved in cities and regions at a very, very large scale, sort of, mega and giga scale. So they're very exciting for me now because we can apply biourbanism concepts in the model at really, really large scale and using our data tools in the lab to drive forward some of these concepts. So tremendously exciting for me to be increasing the size and scale of projects as my career has developed over the years.
And McGregor Coxall recently won also the AILA Award for the Drying Green in Sydney, which is an innovative project that integrates that concept of blue and green infrastructure. What in particular stood out about that project?
Well, the Drying Green emerged from a competition, a Green Square Town Centre that we won, which was a renewal of a brownfield, so an ex-industrial site into an urban centre. And the part of that was the open space network that was created as part of the new town centre design. And the Drying Green was one of those open spaces or parks that sat inside the sort of core of the centre. So that was 20 years ago, and the project has had a very, very long gestation, very complex. But it's situated in the densest part of Sydney now, and it's on a former wetland. So it had really, really big flooding problems because in many cities around the world, we've built over former wetlands. And the result of that is, in our big rain events that the streets flood and, many of parts of the city are damaged. So relieving that flooding was a big part of the project. But also, it's not a very large area. But what we want to do, well, it has the old creek that flows underneath, which is called Shays Stream, and it's disappeared now. So it's underground in a concrete culvert, and it's gone. So people who live in Green Square don't even realise that there was a former creek. So our idea was to really bring a series of constructed wetlands, which are these places where we have water plants and water flowing into the park on the surface. So there was a memory of the old wetlands and the stream. But in doing so, we made it what we call an ecological engine. And we drew and pumped water out of this below ground culvert, concrete culvert, and we draw it up into the park. And then it runs through a series of filters and quite sophisticated technological processes to clean the water before it actually does a 3-day pass through the wetlands, and that strips out the final pollutants and nutrients. And through that system, through this ecological engine, it's then delivered back into the culvert where it flows out to Alexandria Canal and out into our waterways. So we're really making a big contribution to the wider city from a very small park by harnessing, these kind of biourbanism ideas, which are blue and green infrastructure. So converting grey infrastructure, concrete, into, ecological and waterway outcomes. And now we've got ducks in there. We've got incredible, wildlife that's coming in and people are moving around the park. So it's really wonderful how we can use our great thinking to repair our cities and create better outcomes that are more resilient. Of course, it's cooler, it reduces heat as the trees grow. It's going to be a great place, for people to come on hot days. It's a great public space. So very, very happy about that outcome.
And you're also involved in the exemplar water-sensitive urban design and nature-based projects going on in India. What can you share with us about those?
Well, we've been working with the Australian government, and this is part of what I was mentioning previously about, Australia as a leader in environmental and sustainable design and being able to export some of our expertise into nations that are, really challenged. So we've been working with DFAT and the federal government there with our water team and our environment team in the lab to actually try and retrofit some of the waterways and water areas in some of the Indian cities. And these are pilot projects. So we're working with local Indian engineers to develop the expertise and capability to roll these kind of pilots out at a larger scale. But the cities in India, of course, are very popular. I think India recently has surpassed China as having the largest population in the world. Their cities are growing rapidly, and water and pollution, supplying fresh potable water, sewage systems, stormwater drainage. These things are all very, very complex in high density environments of Indian cities. So yeah, it's been very interesting for us to work together with the local partners and then bring our Australian expertise and learnings to help those cities. And I think it's great that the Australian government is engaged in this as well. It's really great in terms of our outreach, I guess, to our neighbours.
So with so much opportunity already to hand, when you think future about biourbanism and the application it can have for our built environment, what is it that excites you the most?
I think the really exciting part about the application of biourbanism is a radical shift in the way that our engineering, architecture, design disciplines have thought about cities, and a recognition that human beings, Homo sapiens, are a species alongside many others, and that we can design our cities in a much more engaging and potent way to future-proof them for the challenges that are coming. That's what excites me the most. It's really having people talk about and interact in a way that we haven't done previously. And that, I think, is going to be informed by AI and by data as well, because we're starting to be able to measure good design outcomes, measure the importance of landscape and open space outcomes in cities, and be able to provide the information for our government bureaucrats and funders around the health benefits and the economic benefits, the avoided cost. Healthy communities that are well supplied with parks and open space and walkable public domain are healthier. Therefore, the burden on the health system is less. So we're now being able to actually translate some of the great outcomes that good design provides in our cities into measurable economic outcomes. And I think that's also a great transition that is occurring, because it's bringing people to a realization that the retrofit and great design of cities is really important, and it has economic benefit, health benefit to our communities and our populations.
It sure does, and definitely we're very fortunate to have McGregor Coxall defining a model for biourbanism to enable the radical shift required to redesign cities of the future. Thank you very much for sharing with us today.
Thanks so much. It was great to chat.
This podcast was brought to you by VinZero. VinZero help the AEC and manufacturing industries keep pace with digital change and achieve their technological and sustainability leadership goals. VinZero is a company that cares about creating and building a better world. Together, we are working with industry and environmental experts, providing forums and platforms through our VinZero Think community to create conversations that matter to our future generations. We invite you to join in the conversation and participate in our Think community. Like and subscribe to Think Future to stay up to date with the latest innovations and conversations as we take AEC and manufacturing around the world closer to zero. You can download our podcasts at vinzero.com or from your favourite podcast platform. From VinZero Think Future, thanks for listening.